sharp enough to slice through the doorway behind me. "You're ungrateful. Get out and never come back." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just picked up my small bag, stepped past her, and left without a word. For 6 months, I told myself that moment was freedom. That silence was closure. But tonight, as I sit in my apartment watching my phone buzz nonstop across the table, I realize the real betrayal wasn't when they threw me out. It's what happened weeks later, the moment Dad texted me. "Before I tell you the rest, tell me where you listening from, so I know I'm not alone. And when you've heard my story, tell me what would you have done in my place. My name is Violet, and if you had met me a year ago, you would have assumed I came from one of those stable, tight-knit suburban families, the kind that hosts perfect holiday dinners and hangs coordinated portraits on the living room wall. From the outside, we looked exactly like that. But inside, everything felt off, like a picture frame that kept tilting, no matter how many times you straightened it. My mother, Elaine, was the emotional center of the house, loud when she was angry, louder when she felt wronged, and strangely quiet any time I succeeded at something. My father, Robert, played the role of the logical one, the voice of reason, the man who believed every problem could be solved if his children just stepped up. And then there was my older brother, Tyler, 3 years ahead of me, and somehow still treated like a kid who needed time to find himself. I was the only one who ever did find myself. I learned early that if I wanted something, I had to earn it. Scholarships, 2 part-time jobs in college, my first corporate position in finance straight out of school. I paid my own rent, my own groceries, my own tuition. What I didn't realize was that the more self-sufficient I became, the more my family assumed responsibility was just my nature. It started small, Mom forgetting to buy groceries and asking if I could pick up a few things just this once. Then came the utility bills they were a little short on. After that, the mortgage. At first, my contributions felt helpful, then necessary, then expected, and eventually invisible. The house I grew up in, sitting in a quiet suburb outside the city, was a 2-story place with beige siding and a porch swing my dad never got around to fixing. I used to love that house. I used to think it loved me back. But houses don't love. They hold memories, and memories can rot if no one takes care of them. Every Sunday, I'd drive over with fresh groceries and a calm smile stepping into a living room that always felt on the verge of an argument. Tyler would be on the couch, controller in hand, telling me he was working on ideas for his future. Mom would sigh dramatically about how hard things had been lately. Dad would mention how the mortgage was tight again and somehow every pair of eyes would drift toward me. For years, I swallowed it, told myself families help each other, told myself it would get better. But that Sunday, 6 months ago, the air in that living room felt heavier than usual. Mom's arms were crossed. Dad stood in the doorway like a disappointed judge. Tyler didn't even pause his game. They were waiting for me. And I didn't know it yet, but the version of me they depended on was about to stop existing. The weeks after I left felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet, in the way an empty apartment hums at night like the walls are waiting for you to speak first. I cooked simple dinners, organized my closet more times than necessary. Anything to keep my mind occupied. Anything to stop replaying the moment Mom Elaine told me to get out and never come back. I reminded myself I had done the right thing, that walking away was long overdue. And for a while, I believed it. Then one Thursday evening, while I was sitting on my couch, scrolling through work emails, my phone buzzed. Just one vibration. No dramatic ringtone. No warning. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was a message from my father, Robert. "Why haven't you paid the mortgage?" No greeting, no concern, no acknowledgement of the 6 months of silence since the day they threw me out. Just a demand. My first reaction wasn't anger, it was disbelief. A laugh escaped me, involuntary and sharp. They kicked me out, told me never to come back, and now they wanted to know why I wasn't still funding the house they refused to let me live in. I stared at the message, the words growing heavier the longer I looked at them. A part of me wondered if it was a mistake. Maybe he meant to text Tyler, but deep down, I knew the truth. They'd never expected Tyler to step up. They never had. They probably never would. Slowly, I opened my banking app. I scrolled through the old payments I had made, groceries, bills, transfers labeled mortgage help, month after month, year after year, thousands of dollars. So much of my life siphoned into that house. But they weren't asking about my kindness. They were asking why their supply had stopped. I set my phone down, but my thoughts kept running. Where had my money gone? Had the mortgage been paid at all? Why was I even wondering? Why did I care? I didn't owe them anything. Not after the way they treated me. Still, the message gnawed at me with a mix of fury and clarity I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Because this wasn't just entitlement, it was expectation. In their minds, I hadn't left. I had simply taken a break before resuming my job as their financial safety net. My phone buzzed again, another message from Dad. This time, I didn't open it. I grabbed my jacket and went for a walk, letting the cold evening air bite at my skin. With each step, my anger sharpened into something cleaner, steadier. They thought I would stay quiet forever. They thought I would keep paying without protest. But as I walked under the streetlights, I realized something I had never admitted to myself. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was done. By the time I got back to my apartment, my anger had settled into something calmer, almost icy. The kind of calm that makes every thought feel sharp. I sat on the edge of my couch, opened my father's message again, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. I typed slowly, deliberately, each word a choice, not a reaction. Oh, I thought I wasn't welcome. I stared at the sentence for a moment. That was it. No explanation, no apology, no emotional cushioning like I always offered them. It was the truth, clean and stripped bare. I hit send. The message delivered instantly, and for several heartbeats, nothing happened. No calls, no follow-up texts, just silence. It was almost poetic. I set the phone face down and walked to the kitchen, letting my fingertips rest on the cool countertop. The apartment around me felt different, like I had rearranged the air. 6 months ago, I left their house without a word. Tonight, I finally said the one thing that should have been said years ago. As the quiet stretched on, memories came back, not in a soft, nostalgic way, but in the way old bruises throb when pressed. Mom Elaine telling me as a teenager that girls should know how to support their family. Dad Robert calling me the reliable one, which I later learned was code for the one we can drain. Tyler sighing dramatically whenever I asked him to help with anything, then being comforted by Mom for his stress. Me at 22 working 2 jobs while they told me I should be grateful for the roof over my head. The pattern had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. My phone buzzed once. I ignored it. A second time. I still ignored it. A third. I walked back to the couch and flipped the phone over. 3 messages from Dad. 1 from Mom. 2 from Tyler. None of them opened. Not yet. Instead, I pulled up my old payment history again, months of transfers labeled simply mortgage bills, groceries, each one a snapshot of how hard I tried to hold that family together. Why had I worked myself to exhaustion while Tyler lounged in the living room? Why had I thought love meant paying every overdue bill? Why had I convinced myself that being the good daughter meant being the responsible daughter? Because that's what they trained me to believe. My phone buzzed again, this time a call. Mom. I let it ring. Her voice, that shrill panic I knew was coming, no longer had the power to control my breathing. I sat down, folded my hands, and whispered to myself, not anymore. Tonight wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. And the moment I finally decided to answer them back, the moment I stopped being their silent provider, everything they built on top of me began to crack. The moment I whispered, not anymore, the universe must have heard me because my phone lit up like a fire alarm. The screen flashed so fast it blurred. Calls, texts, voicemails, all layered on top of each other until it looked like my phone was struggling to breathe. This was the moment in the thumbnail. This was when my phone blew up. I picked it up slowly, almost curious which version of my family would show up. First, the angry one, the desperate one, or the one that pretended to be calm until you said something they didn't like. Dad's name appeared first, then Mom's, then Tyler's, all in rapid succession. I let them ring. I wanted to hear their voices without actually hearing them, if that makes sense. The muffled vibration, the frantic insistence, it told me everything I needed to know. They weren't worried about me. They weren't even worried about losing me. They were worried about losing the mortgage payment. Eventually I answered, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see the truth uncovered fully, painfully, and in their own words. I slid my thumb across the screen. Dad's voice exploded immediately. Violet. Finally. Why didn't you answer? Do you understand how serious this is? No, I said calmly, but I'm sure you're about to tell me. He took a breath, trying to reel himself back into that falsely rational tone he used whenever he thought he could still control the situation. We're behind on the mortgage. The bank called. We're in danger of missing another payment. You should have paid it this month. I let the words hang for a moment. I should have, I repeated quietly. Yes, you know your mother and I can't cover it. Tyler's still what I cut in. Still looking for his purpose. Still figuring things out. Still sitting on the couch playing games. Silence. Even through the phone, I could feel the way the air changed in that house. Don't disrespect your brother, Dad snapped. Funny, I said, leaning back on my couch. That's exactly what Mom said 6 months ago, right before she told me to get out and never come back. Another silence, but this one wasn't empty, it was charged. Mom cut in, now her voice sharp with performed outrage. We were upset. Families say things they don't mean, but you meant it enough, I said. To watch me walk out with one bag and never check if I made it home alive. You're being dramatic, she spat. And you're being manipulative, I said simply. Mom inhaled sharply, offended by the honesty. Dad stepped back in. Violet, listen. This isn't the time for old arguments. The house is not my responsibility, I finished for him. But you've always helped, he insisted. You know we depend on you, I know, I said softly. I finally know. Before he could respond, another call buzzed in. I glanced at the screen. Tyler. I almost laughed. The irony was unreal. I need to take this, I told Dad and hung up before he could protest. I answered Tyler's call. He didn't even say hello. What the hell? Violet, he barked. Mom's crying. Dad's freaking out. Why did you say that to them? Which part, I asked. The part where I said I wasn't welcome, or the part where I stopped paying your bills? He cursed under his breath. You know they can't afford the mortgage without you. And why is that my problem? I asked. Because you're the responsible one. The sentence crashed against me like cold water. There it was, the script they'd handed me my entire life. The role I never auditioned for but somehow played flawlessly. And you're what, Tyler? I asked, keeping my voice calm. The delicate one, the fragile genius, the man-child who needs protecting. He went silent, but I didn't stop. I left that house 6 months ago, and none of you, not one thought to apologize. But the minute your finances fall apart suddenly, I'm worth calling again. That's not fair, he muttered. 8 months, I said. The mortgage hasn't been fully paid in 8 months. How do you even know that he demanded? Because I said, letting each word land, I called the bank. He exhaled hard, the sound of someone caught without a lie prepared. So I continued. I'll ask you plainly, what did you all do with the money I sent? Why does that matter? He snapped. The point, I said sharply, is that you lied. All of you. For nearly a year. And the second I stopped paying, the whole house fell apart. He had no comeback. I hung up. I wasn't finished. I dialed the bank again, more for confirmation than answers. The representative spoke in a steady, neutral tone, explaining that partial payments had been submitted here and there, but not enough to satisfy the monthly requirements. 8 months of inconsistency. 8 months of deception. When I ended the call, another stream of messages from Mom flooded in. How could you do this to us? We raised you. You owe your family. You're tearing us apart. I breathed slowly, letting her words pass through me without sticking. Then I called them back, putting the phone on speaker. Mom answered mid-sob. Violet, please, no, I said, voice low and steady. Now you're going to listen. They fell silent. For years, I paid the bills, the groceries, the mortgage. I covered everything while Tyler did nothing, and you both acted like it was normal. Expected. Dad tried to interject. We were struggling. You were doing well. I was drowning, I snapped. You just didn't look closely enough to see it. Mom sniffed loudly. You're being cruel. No, I said. Cruel as throwing your daughter out and then expecting her to keep paying for the roof over your heads. Neither of them spoke. You said I wasn't welcome. I took you at your word, I continued. And now you want my money, but not me. I'm done. Mom's voice came back in a frantic whisper. "If you don't help us, we could lose the house. That's between you and the bank," I said. "Not me." Dad's voice rose, the last attempt at control. "You're abandoning your family." "No," I said quietly. "You abandoned me when you chose convenience over your own child." There was a long, trembling pause. And then the final blow, clean, precise, irreversible. "I won't pay another dollar. Handle your own mess." Before they could respond, I ended the call. The phone buzzed again, instantly. Then again, and again. But I placed it face down on the table and walked away. For the first time in my life, their chaos stayed on the other side of the line. The silence that followed was nothing like the silence I'd lived with for years, the heavy, suffocating kind where everyone expected me to fix the unspoken crisis. This silence felt clean, like fresh air after a long storm. For the next few days, my phone kept buzzing off and on, but never with the same frantic intensity as that first night. The calls shifted from outrage to pleading to guilt-laced monologues I didn't bother opening. I didn't need to. I already knew every script they would use, every emotional hook, every threat wrapped in disappointment, and none of them worked anymore. I went to work, made myself coffee, took long walks through the city blocks near my apartment. Simple things, quiet things, things that belonged only to me. And it struck me how rare this feeling was, this sense that my life was finally mine. Meanwhile, the consequences they had tried to dump onto my shoulders finally landed where they belonged. The bank continued reaching out to my parents directly. Tyler stopped calling altogether, maybe out of shame, maybe out of anger, maybe both. Dad sent a few stiff messages about figuring things out. Mom sent paragraphs that swung wildly between apologies and accusations. But I didn't reply, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. Because if I stepped back into that role, if I paid even one bill, I knew exactly what would happen. The cycle would reset, the burden would shift back onto me, and nothing would change. So I didn't step back. I stayed in my quiet apartment, breathing easier than I had in years, realizing something I should have known a long time ago: letting people face the consequences of their choices isn't betrayal. Sometimes it's the only way anyone ever grows. A few weeks later, I sat by my apartment window, watching the city lights flicker against the glass. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel tense, didn't feel responsible for anyone else's emergencies, didn't feel like a disappointment waiting to happen. I felt free. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was finally honest. My parents could no longer pretend I was their built-in solution. Tyler could no longer pretend I was the reason his life stayed stuck. And I could no longer pretend that love meant sacrificing myself until there was nothing left. Walking away wasn't abandonment. It was self-respect. And if you've ever been the one holding a family together while quietly falling apart, you know exactly how heavy that role can be and how liberating it feels the moment you finally put it down. If any part of my story sounds like yours, tell me where you're listening from. Share your experience in the comments so someone out there knows they're not alone. And if you want more stories like this, stories about boundaries, justice, and taking your life back, hit subscribe. There's more to come.